Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you to everybody for being with us here today. And in particular, thank you to Solus, who were part of the group that hosted us in Mount Lucas. I think two of us that were here in Mount Lucas recently, in terms of seeing with our own eyes the National Construction Campus and all the fantastic work that's going on. And just, I suppose, following on, Andrew, from your remarks there, and Tony, about how the model of learning has changed. It was really interesting to hear how much on-site you were doing, where you're physically bringing your guys out and allowing people to learn there and then, and that's getting such great buy-in from construction companies. And I think we probably do need to look at more of that. That day we spoke an awful lot about apprenticeships, and I see in your own statement today you've referenced that 50,000 figure in terms of the additional construction workers that we're going to require in our economy between now and 2030. And I suppose I've looked at this a little bit since we last met, and I really do feel, based on my research, that I'm concerned that the state isn't leading by example when it comes to taking on apprenticeships. So I would like to ask each organisation here, how many apprenticeships are currently in your organisations? I think innovation, as we've spoken about, and new technology has to have a huge role to play in construction and in future-proofing the construction industry. And the two main benefits, as I see it, are the reduction of carbon and the reduction of time. And as we know, we're faced with two significant crises in both of those areas. And I suppose I'm yet to be convinced on the time perspective. And I suppose part of that, Mr. O'Connor, you've explained in terms of the modular homes that we had the presentation on, is more in relation to the site servicing element than the delivery of the units themselves. And that is absolutely fair enough, but we still have to wait for those sites to be serviced. So how can we figure this out? How can we speed this up? Because if this isn't going to be a game changer in terms of saving time, then it's not going to be a game changer. I know you spoke, Mr. O'Connor, about moving from junior infants to secondary level, and hopefully again onto third level in terms of rapid delivery homes. And I suppose I would feel that the private sector was classes ahead of us on this. And that's because we already have hotels, we have holiday camps, we have examples of this working around the country for the past 5 years or more. They presumably are doing it because it's saved in cost. Did it save in time there? Is there something we could learn from there, from the site servicing perspective? Quilcha, and I know you've really kind of gone through this with us, but is there a couple of key takeaways we could have in terms of what we could do to shift the dial on the 25% timber frame? What can we do as TDs to help us get there? Is the 3 versus 24 story legislation a sticking point? Does that need to change if we're to get genuine buy-in across the construction sector? And on the National Standards Authority, just a small question. You spoke about SME supports, and I just wonder what they will look like. And from Solus's perspective, your numbers you're giving us of people coming through your doors, all super impressive. How many of these are kind of frontline construction, if you like? How many of these are people working physically in construction rather than in the construction industry? So how many people are bricklayers or whatever versus the sales rep in the kind of wholesalers? And that's a lot of questions, but I know the last speaker got an extra 10 minutes, so I hope I'll get the same.
Thank you for watching the clock, Deputy Higgins. We can allow plenty of time for it, yeah. So I don't know, who's the first question directed to?
Maybe if everybody would answer me on apprenticeships before we go into the individuals, if people have it available, and if not, you might send it on after.
Maybe in excess of 60. I don't know the exact number now. I can come back to you, Deputy. Yeah.
Yeah. So we in Quilcha we operate a graduate program every year. So we're bringing on new foresters and engineers to the tune of about 10, 15. We're also looking to hire directly into our operative workforce as well and develop people through that. One of the things that we are seeing within our sector, which isn't unique to forestry and sawmilling, and our supply chain, it's similar with construction, is workforce capacity challenges going forward. The forestry sector will double in size in the next 10 to 15 years. It's a high-class problem in some way. We're going to have readily available supply in terms of being able to use more wood and build with more wood. It's to drive our bioeconomy, but we do need to be careful in terms of attracting people into the industry as well. We need more foresters, more ecologists, more engineers, so we've got to work extensively at promoting career opportunity within forestry, particularly diversity as well within forestry, which has been a real challenge for us. We also need more operatives in terms of operating within the supply chain, harvesting operators, people to plant trees, all the way through the workforce. So we are working across the industry at the moment on that workforce capacity challenge. I think this is an opportunity as well if we can get this right in terms of a just transition, because what forestry can offer is well-paid green tech jobs in the rural sector. However, we need to approach this strategically and make sure that we have an apprenticeship scheme in place.
And
we also have graduates coming in as well.
And do you currently have an apprenticeship scheme?
Not formally, no. We are looking at setting that up. I think it's larger than just Quilta. I think we have to work with the relevant departments, but also right across the sector as well to build something meaningful. We have had apprenticeships in the past, but it's been not at the right scale. We need to do something a lot bigger now with the numbers of people we have to come in.
Yeah, thank you. Go ahead.
Thank you, Deputy. In terms of the NSAI, we have a small, modest graduate scheme across the entire organisation. We take a number of interns as well. Because a lot of the work that we do relies on expertise and expert decision making, we tend not to have or go towards the apprenticeship space.
Okay.
More looking at our focus is more at graduate level.
Okay. Would you? Sorry, go on ahead.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. No. Thanks, Deputy. I suppose we are a kind of a strategy, a funding, and oversight body. So we wouldn't have some of the technical requirements that some of the other agencies have. However, we're very conscious we're the statutory authority for apprenticeships. So we have taken on 3 apprentices from the newer apprenticeships. We have one a cybersecurity apprentice. We have a recruitment apprentice, and I think we have a software development apprentice. So we have 3 in the organisation. We've got just over 200 people in all, and we have 3 apprentices in there as well. And then just on your question, how many of our apprentices go into the construction sector? Well, the 22,500 number, they're craft, so that's your plumbers, your electricians, your bricklayers, so the vast majority of them will end up at some point in the construction industry sector. What we're trying to do, and it's a big focus of people like Tony, is to try and move away from that sense that you have to be a skilled tradesman to work in the construction centre, and we're trying to develop offerings, on retrofit technicians, construction technicians, build a skills pipeline that doesn't involve that long kind of 4-year apprenticeship route, and tries to fast track the skills needs that we all know we have. And
It was great when I was there to see so much happening in the retrofitting space and learning the skills on that, but a lot of those people weren't necessarily people who'd actually be carrying it out. Do you keep stats on that?
Yeah, so definitely
Super, yeah.
the figure for direct construction work is about 75%
Perfect,
of what we
thank
saw last year. So roughly about 3/4, yeah.
Super, great. And the National Standards Authority of Ireland, do you want to maybe just answer that query about the SME sports?
Yes, indeed. So I suppose directly related to the subject matter in terms of Agrimon and of modern methods of construction, we have produced a guidance on how to approach an Agrimon application that walks through that process. So then more generally looking across the NSAI and looking at what else we can do by way of supports to SME community, and looking at the future direction that's moving more towards digital in terms of BIM, carbon reporting. In those spaces, we've developed a number of programs that are taking SMEs from through the core quality management standards. So, for instance, ISO 9001, which is the backbone of many standards, to encourage the SME who might not be engaged with either standards or indeed certification to go on that journey and to start the initial gap analysis. We've worked that through with very simple spreadsheets, simple explainer videos to go along with it. We've also applied that in the area of 27001, so that's the information security, again looking at areas where businesses might across the spectrum in construction and other areas might find themselves having to deal with that space. So again, broadening out that exposure to standards and certification. And I think finally then, to encourage SME participation in particular in our standards committees, because again, that's where there is access to the cutting level knowledge. We have engaged with Engineers Ireland, and we offer CPD learning points for those who join our standards committee. So again, it's to promote and actively, I suppose, reward those who might participate in the development of standards, which is of course the other side of the future work in this space.
We've time. Do we have time for the timber? Yeah.
Thanks, Debbie. I think this really is an open goal for us here. When you look at the benefits from timber frame, they're very obvious. When you look at it from a carbon point of view, a recent COFORD report calculated that from a house point of view, it's 2.5 times of carbon benefit from embodied carbon and the stored carbon, and that increases significantly to 3.5 times for apartments. Now, we are building some of our houses with timber frame, but we're not making the cut through at all into apartments.
It's 3 stories.
And that is the issue in terms of height, but Des can address that in terms of specifics in a moment. I don't think timber frame is well understood here. I think people sometimes think it's some form of log cabin, and they don't understand exactly what timber frame is, that it is a modern method of construction, and it's very difficult to tell the difference really in a finished building. But the good thing is we don't have to persuade buyers. We just have to persuade, I think, local authorities, developers, investors that this is the right thing to do. And when it comes to that, when you look at the carbon benefits, but you also look at, we just talked about capacity. Offsite is the way to do this because it's much faster, 25% faster. So I think there's an inevitability here. And when it comes to cost as well, the material cost, it's probably about the same, but when it comes to second fixing and finishing out the project, it's a lot cheaper because it's a lot faster. I think I would be very confident that we can make this jump and make it quickly. Scotland, pretty much same society, 80%, so no reason why we can't do it in Ireland. And I think timber frame is a right now, as it was said earlier, it's not a new technology. It is here right now. We have invested heavily in timber frame. We have a growing softwood resource here in Ireland we can utilise. We don't have to import the material. We have a sawmilling sector which has invested 200 million in the last 5 years. It's one of the most technologically advanced sawmilling sectors in Europe. We have a timber frame sector that's ready to deliver as well. So it really is all set up for us to take advantage here. Des, you might address just some of the specifics in the key takeaways on how to drive forward timber frame.
Yeah, thank you, Deputy. Driving forward, how we get to 80%, yes, there's a few barriers, okay? It's about creating a regulatory environment that supports the use of timber-based modern methods of construction. And some of our climate policies and our building regs or technical guidance documents don't necessarily fully align. What is evident, certainly my view would be on the latest technical guidance document Part B that has just closed for public consultation there about 2 weeks ago. It certainly has advanced, but it appears to be moving a little bit more prescriptive rather than performance-based, certainly in the language. Just to give you one example, you mentioned about the height restriction. The draft technical guidance document B, as it's currently published for consultation, limits the use of combustible materials above 11 metres to materials of class A2. That, in my view, should apply to the linings, but not the entire structure from which the wall elements are constructed. So I think the regulatory environment, obviously, there are some things that we need to look at. In terms of, and Deputy Owner Bryn mentioned earlier about prioritisation of embodied carbon regulation, we see that as essential. We need to fast track that. The Energy Performance and Buildings Directive, the draft document that's there at the moment, looks set to bring in embodied carbon regulation for buildings over 2,000 square metres from around 2027, and I think for all buildings from 2030. 2027 is 4 years away. Other jurisdictions have already brought this regulation in. Denmark is the most recent. They brought in car CO2 limits for new builds over 1,000 square metres from January of this year. So they're advancing. You know, I don't know where we are in terms of bringing in that legislation for Ireland, but I think we certainly need to move fast.
Thank you.
Thanks, Deputy. And Ms. Larkin, I noticed you making notes there when we were discussing TGTV. Did you wish to come in on that, or one of your team, just on that discussion on building with timber and this 11 metres? And because certainly down at one of the events in Avondale, it did seem to be a contentious issue. So does anybody wish to expand on that?
Yeah.
Ms. Warren?
Well, we have an Irish standard for timber frame construction, and the scope of that is at the moment 10 metres and 1 hour is the maximum fire resistance. And I suppose we normally produce standards in the context of the regulatory environment, and it would be very rare that a standard would conflict with what's in, we wouldn't conflict with what's in regulation or even in guidance to the regulation. So at the moment there's a committee there, it's working on revising the standard. And I don't think it would be possible for them to change the scope of that tomorrow. There would have to be maybe more technical work done on that. But there's nothing to stop a standard being developed to allow for building in timber to greater heights. And the Eurocodes are already there. So there are structural design codes which already not prescribe but offer ways of designing buildings to meet safety and fire, and so those codes are there and can be used. So there are, even though IS 440 doesn't cover beyond 10, there are codes of practice there which allow designers to design buildings in compliance with the building regulations above.
Okay, I think we probably want to discuss that further, because I know we've heard 14-storey and 18-storey timber frame with timber technology. Mr. Bell.